Okay, first, I would like to thank you all for having me here, and I'm really glad to be here. I've lived many lives in my lifetime, but I have a very deep connection to Nevada because a part of my life experience unfolded in Nevada, and the way things were during that time, I had a good relation. Well, I got to interact with the tribes of Nevada directly and indirectly. So I'm going to try to be as coherent as I can, make as much sense as I can, but I'm going to tell you to start right off, I'm kind of crazy, and I want you to understand that from the beginning. So if I say something that you don't agree with, or we have a difference of opinion about, I'd like it to just be considered that. And I was thinking, the idea of community awareness, and what does all that really, how far does that go? Community awareness. Because because when I say I'm crazy, I really am, and when I look at it, sometimes I feel as though I'm in a dimension where we don't really understand and recognize who we are anymore. And this transcends race and culture and everything to me. It's like, it's like we're forgetting that we're human beings. We're human beings, and it's like we're forgetting that we're human beings. We don't participate in this reality from the perception of human beings. We don't think like human beings. We don't feel like human beings. We feel oppressed, victimized, and a whole lot of other things, but we're not really connected. And I know that whatever we're trying to do for our people and amongst our people, and I started out in the activist community in the 70s. And whatever programs we have now, we didn't have them. And in my own mind, in my own point of view, what happened in the 70s with the activist period of time, whether it was the fishing rights struggle, which was in the 60s and 70s out of the Northwest, or it was Alcatraz or AIM, or it was the stuff, what was going on in the local communities, that activist period produced a lot of what we have now. So we have more programs and more services and more things of this nature now than we had before that activist period. So on one hand, things are getting better in that kind of a way, but yet when I turn around and I look at what's going on in our communities, what's going on with our youth, and I look at the spreading negatives, whether it's from speed to alcohol to just the way the poverty spreads and how it's affecting the young people, then it tells me, well, something's missing. No matter what we've accomplished, something is missing, because this problem continues to spread through the generations. No matter how good our intentions have been, it's still there, and it's spreading more. It's spreading faster now than it did when we were young. And I try to think, well, what is it? What's missing here? And so the best I can come down to is what's missing is how we perceive reality. This is where, to me, something's out of synchronicity. It's in how we perceive reality. Because everything that we've done to make better things in our community, whether it's in the native community or the outside community, everything that we've attempted to do, we did it through the system. We did it through the motions. We did it the way that you're supposed to do it. Even when it was that political rebellion that was going on in my generation, because that political rebellion of my generation was more than just the natives. It was all of the young were rebelling. And we were rebelling because we had a higher ideal, and we wanted a fairer shake for everybody. And so we did, so we went through the system, we did whatever we did in order to make a better situation, but the situation never really got better. And so what I'm saying, I think it has to do with our perception of reality. I think that we have to think differently. You know, I think we need to outthink them. See, we're not outthinking them, whoever they may be. And when I look at this thing, outthinking them, so I want to go to this about who we are and our own power as individuals. See, we're human beings. And our relationship to the reality of power comes from that reality, the reality that we are human beings. And as human beings, our bone, flesh, and blood, we're made up of the metals, minerals, and liquids of the earth. We are literally shapes of the earth, and we have being. All things of the earth are made up of the same metals, minerals, and liquids. So all things of the earth are shapes of the earth. We are shapes of the earth. All things of the earth are shapes of the earth. We have being. All things of the earth have being. And that being comes from our relationship to the sun, sky, universe. Being, human beings. All things have being. And our power as human beings is in that reality. We are human beings. We are part earth and we are literally part sky. The being part, the energy, the spirit. And our power is in being human beings. Now, and we manifest our power through our intelligence. As human beings, Creator gave us life as human beings. And then Creator gave, but to go with life, as a part of that life, for our form, Creator gave us intelligence. See, life without intelligence in our form would be pointless. So we were given life with intelligence. These two things go together. And life with intelligence. We manifest our reality with our intelligence. We manifest our reality by how we've either been taught or programmed to perceive reality. We are human beings. Now, our relationship to power. All right, now we know all things of the earth are made up of the same thing, so all things of the earth have being, all my relations. So we know they can take the uranium, the uranium out of the earth and fossil fuels out of the earth and put it through a mining refining process and convert its being into a form of energy to run their systems. Well, what technologic industrial civilization does is it mines the being part of human through how it programs the human to perceive reality through its intelligence. And then it converts the being part of human into a form of energy to run its systems. This is about power. This is about the reality of power. Now when you take uranium and you change the being of the uranium in the fossils, they mine it, they put it through this refining process, it creates poison and toxic waste. When they mine the being part of human through how they imprint human to perceive reality, it leaves behind poison and toxic waste. And this poison and toxic waste, these are the fears, the doubts, and the insecurities that become part of our perception of reality. And when that happens to us, then we start to perceive reality from the perception of our inabilities. We'll hide that behind pride and a lot of stuff, but basically we're participating in reality from the perception of our inabilities. So this is the poison and toxic waste that's left over from my being part of human, through how you program the humans to perceive reality. Now, power. Have you ever had the situation where you felt powerless? And when you're feeling at your most powerless, how bad can you make yourself feel? And then how does this affect the people around you? Well, see, if you can make yourself feel bad and you can affect the people around you in that process, then that means you have power. So whatever's going on in this reality isn't about a lack of absence of power. It's not. What's going on in this reality is we've been imprinted and programmed to perceive reality in such a distorted way that we use our own power against ourselves. So we use our power. So this isn't about us not having power. This is an issue of us. This is an issue of having power that is used incoherently and chaotically. But it's not an issue of us not having power. So we've been imprinted to perceive reality, all right, in an incoherent, chaotic way. Now, if we understood to take this same power of our intelligence and head in the direction of using it as clearly and coherently as we possibly can, we would create another power. We would create another energy. Because in my opinion, see, is that whatever we're going to do about awareness, we really need to consider that we are human beings, and we need to consider bringing real thinking to the table. We need to start thinking about how to deal with the situation that we're confronted with. I mean, really thinking. You know, this mining process, the way this mining process works, everything is about energy, everything's about power, everything is about energy. So when we think, we project electromagnetic thought, energy. That's what thought is. Electromagnetic energy in scientific terms, so we project this energy, electromagnetic energy, when we're thinking. Power, energy. But energy is supposed to flow. It's supposed to go. It has its own momentum and its own way of doing things. In the mining process, we are imprinted to perceive reality through believing. Believing is thinking. We're not taught to think. We're programmed to believe. We're not taught to think. We're programmed to believe. We're programmed to believe that believing is thinking. But when under that program, all right, see, believing has its limits. It has its walls. It has its prejudices. Believing, it's a box. So when we're programmed to believe rather than taught to think, we're taking that energy of thinking and we're putting it in a box. We're confining it in a stressful situation. And so we're not really thinking our way through. We're not really thinking of solutions, you know, because we believing this thinking. So for us understanding our own power, the power of our intelligence, I think it's very crucial that somewhere in this process that we start to think about some of these things and getting especially the younger generations to understand the power of their own intelligence and the value of their intelligence. Because when I look at what's going on within this this technological mining reality, what I think one of the things that it does, the whole objective is to erase our identity. To erase our identity as human beings. And it has many ways of working, but to erase our identity of human beings, erase the ancestral memory, erase the understanding of the ancestral memory. And this stuff happens in stages. It happens in stages as they do this kind of a process against us. Because when we look within our own realities, within our own community, if we look clearly and coherently, if we look objectively, if we recognize reality, what is going on around us, you know, our understanding of our way of life is diminishing. And it is. You know, we're going to be real and face reality. In each generation, the way this thing works, in each generation, the understanding of our ancestral reality diminishes because there is less people to have that understanding. It's more than to just know the ceremonies, and it's more than just know the ritual, and it's more than just knowing the language. It's about a way of perceiving reality. It's about a way of thinking. It's about a way of thinking. Ancestral, I mean, we need to think and talk to our next generations about being human beings and what that means, because that's who we really are. You know, in our ancestral lineage, our oldest memory are as human beings. You know, and every human being is a descendant of a tribe. Every human being is the descendant of a tribe. So what happened to the native peoples here when the descendants of the tribes of Europe got here, all right, it happened in a racial context, but to have another understanding about this, what the descendants of the tribes of Europe did to us when they got here was the same thing that had been done to them for 1,500 years before they got here. So it was the only way they knew how to behave. See, they no longer remembered being a human being, and none of that. That had all been taken out now. There had been property and fiefdoms and serfdoms and peasants and all of this kind of a thing. So that memory of being a human being had been erased. But at one time, they perceived reality the same way our ancestors did. The earth is the mother. This is a spiritual reality that we're in. It's not about a material, physical reality. We're in a spiritual reality. This is about an evolution of being. And the evolution of being is in what kind of balance we keep in our human form in this spiritual reality. But by the time the descendants of the tribes of Europe got here in the 1400s, they no longer remembered they were human beings. And when they asked when the first ancestors they met of ours, when they asked us who we are, we said we're the human beings, we're the people. And because it wasn't about calling us Indians because they thought they were in India. It was really about calling us Indians because they no longer knew what it meant to be a human being. They didn't recognize that reality anymore. So our value as human beings, so as human beings, we have a way of saying and identifying who we are in our own language. In our own language, we have our own name for who we are, and usually it always comes back to the people or the human beings. In every one of our languages, we have a way of saying who we are. But when this other thing came, when the descendants of tribes of Europe came here, all right, and their predatory mindset, when they came here in their predatory mindset, they called us Indians. And the history of the Indian began, you see, the only history that Indians have is one of genocide and terrorization. Is one of behavior modification, murder, theft. That's the only history that Indians have. We have no other history. But as the human beings and the people, we have a history that goes way beyond the arrival. All right, way beyond the false identity of India. But through this mining process, the more the identity of the Indian takes in our consciousness, then the more we forget. It's like a spiritual severance from our ancestral past, because our ancestors never heard the word Indian. Our ancestors never thought the thought Indian. Our ancestors never made the sound Indian. Our ancestors were always the human beings. So as they impose this new created identity on us, and it's an identity of trauma and terrorization, we get pushed into a corner of trying to defend a part of an identity, not the reality of who we are, but to defend the identity that they imposed upon us. I went with a woman named Anna Mae Aquash and a woman named Navajo Lynn down to Chaco National Monument in New Mexico 35 years ago. And I remember walking through those ruins and those pueblos, because I was part of an activist movement. We were unity and all that. But I remember going through those things, and I saw what they had built there, and I knew they didn't have any of this technology, and I saw that, and I thought, these people really understood. This could have never happened. They could not have created this reality without complete and total cooperation and consensus, thinking like human beings. You know, and for us, whatever it is that we've got to deal with, I think this has to come back, because it's what they're taking. You know, I mean, it's like we are not our ancestors. We are the descendants of our ancestors. And it's dangerous for us to pretend that we are our ancestors, all right, and that we have all the knowledge of our ancestors, because we don't. Now, individually, collectively, we all have fragments of the original memory, and collectively we have all of this knowledge. But it's going to take cooperative understanding to be able to put this back together. Because the danger that I see the most is that we're going to know, they're going to take the understanding away. You know, it's like, we're going to know certain things, but they're going to take the understanding away. It's like, do I know how to work a TV? Yeah, I know how. You plug it in and you turn it on. Do I understand? No. I have a clue. All right? Well, the way the next phase of this thing is to put because as each generation passes, is to put this generation in a deal where they still know, they know the surface parts of the ceremony, the ritual, the language thing, but the understanding is becoming diminished. Because that's what they want to separate us from, is the understanding of being a human being. So, and you know, it's a fine line thing to deal with, because, you know, I was a part of a movement that our whole notion was Indian and proud. We did everything we could possibly do. We went through every kind of thing to help establish that idea. But now when I look back on it, I think it's time to evolve now. That was necessary for that time frame and that space. But you know, we're not Indians. We're human beings. In our tribes, we have our own name for who we are. We have a history and a lineage that goes way back. You know, when you look at the Indian part of our evolution, it's only 500 years. When you look at the reality of our ancestry, you know, this is thousands and thousands of years. So as human beings, if we remember we're human beings, we can outlast this thing. But if we take the identity that they have imposed upon us, we're not going to outlast it, because somewhere in that identity they have imposed upon us, we stop thinking, feeling, and behaving like human beings. We now start to react to the traumas and the frustrations that have been put into our consciousness by the genocide. So about clearing our minds, understanding our reality to the connection of power is in the clear, coherent use of the power of our intelligence. You know, because a part of this confusion that takes place is, you know, we're programmed to believe that the more money we get, the more powerful we get. But that's not true. See, if the more money we get, that gives us access to authority. We're programmed to believe that through voting we get power. That's not true. That's about access to authority. We're programmed to believe to follow this religion will make us powerful. But that's not true. That's about submitting. It's about submitting to these religions, then will give us access to power. But that's not true. That's about authority. And authority and power are two different things. But if we believe those things represent the reality of power, then we'll never recognize and understand our own power, because we don't control those things. Power is something that authority has to adjust to. Power is a blizzard. Power is a prairie fire. Power is an earthquake. Power is a hurricane. Power is individual human beings thinking clearly and coherently. Individual human beings thinking clearly and coherently turns it into collective human beings thinking clearly and coherently, and this is power. This is the power our ancestors had. This is the power our ancestors understood. But granted, our ancestors, when they had this and they understood this, they had not been traumatized like we have. Because in my opinion about tradition, we try to find our tradition, and I see quarreling and fighting about who's more this, who's got it more right. But you know, to me that's a sign of losing our consciousness as human beings. Because tradition, the ancestral tradition, is based upon we are in a spiritual reality. Life is not about freedom, life is about responsibility, and we take responsibility for the gift of intelligence and life, then we will know how to be free. Life is about, we are borrowing the present from the past as well as the future. So our ancestors understood that this is what power really is. This is our responsibility. This is our role. Put it down, it comes down to one word. It's about respect. All tradition is based upon respect. These are our ancestral traditions are based upon respect. Now they're coming and they've influenced how the ceremonies go by us having to hide and do them, and the religious indoctrination I put in everybody alters it a little bit here and there, and we get busy trying to fight to protect these kinds of things, you know, in the name of respect and tradition, but in the names of protecting our traditions. But tradition is based upon respect, and no matter what kind of predatory evolution we have to go through, respect can evolve with that. Our understanding can evolve with that. See, but the deal is we have to recognize that we're human beings, because if we don't respect ourselves, then how can we really show respect? I mean, our intentions, our motives, a lot of stuff. all right, can happen here, but all tradition is based upon respect. And whatever we go through means the language has changed, and different behavior patterns have changed, but respect is respect. And that does not change. See, so as we look at finding our way back, I think that we really need to understand this part. And now about this other, now, and the other thing that seems to have happened in the programming of our perception of reality, and it, you know, for us as Indians, right? For us as Indians, what happened, but it happened to everyone. But in this programming of our reality, all right, the religious part of the programming. See, in our ancestral reality as human beings, life was a gift. You know, and so when we were born into this physical reality, it was like an exchange of gifts. The gift of life to life. And then when we passed and went on to the next reality, it was like a gift. On one term we call it dying, but really it's the gift of being back to being. We're human beings. Being just is. It always is. So we're humans temporarily. So we come in temporarily, we're beings coming in temporarily being human, and then we go back to being. See, it's about an evolution of being. But anyway, in the ancestral reality, life was about gift. But in the religious reality, they told us there was something wrong with us. They told us the lie of original sin. And they told us because of original sin and that there was something wrong with us, we had to submit and obey them. They programmed us to believe that submitting and obeying them was taking responsibility for a crime that we didn't commit. Well, think about your own individual life, but when that sunk in that there was something wrong with us, see, that was the first planting of the seed. And then after that, in order to get us to behave and perceive reality the way they wanted us to, they told us that we were always being told there was something wrong with us. And at some point in there, we get a trauma. Something comes along and just traumatizes us. It's not our fault, but we blame ourselves for it. And then as a result of that, we create behavior patterns where we go through these behavior patterns, repeating some form of the trauma and continuing to judge and blame ourselves. This is how they keep us muddled. Reality is there is nothing wrong with us. Wrong things have happened to us. And when wrong things happen to us, we're going to react, all right, in a certain kind of, we're going to create a behavior pattern of reaction in effect to what happened to us that was wrong. But they programmed us with original sin and that we're guilty. So that means we've been programmed to judge.